Mark, welcome aboard to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to talking about this.
I want to jump into a horror story. What is the kind of worst moment you had managing an engineering team? Things were going terribly wrong. Um, many of us engineers, we find that our best stories are actually, overcoming those worst white nights of coding into 3 a.m. What's your 3 a.m. story?
Oh yeah. There's all sorts of fun ones. So it's just a matter of picking which. I guess it was probably about 5 years ago. We had one of those uh, production crunches. We had gotten something out that had gone out probably a little bit before it should have, not quite as planned as well as it could have. Business needs, kind of driving towards goal, and of course things got missed. Things didn't get tested quite as tightly as they should have, and we ended up kind of paying for it. And in those situations where it's like we can't roll back, we can't. This feature has to go out to meet business objectives that the business is already committed to. So it is kind of pulling the team together and scrambling and figuring out, okay, well, whose piece is this that's not quite right? How can we get all hands on deck to help out? What what challenges do we have to making that happen as a team? Do we need to pull somebody else in that may not even be on the team? Maybe there's some expertise that we're missing around this area here that we're dealing with. So it is that they happen more than I would like to admit. We do our best to plan. We be as proactive as possible. We try to plan out those contingencies and get those requirements just quite right. But it's the best we can. These things bite us, and we have to deal with the situation in the moment and scramble and make it
So
happen.
there's two versions of this and maybe more. One is where you know what the gap is and we just need to fix it.
Yeah,
The other version of it is we have no idea what is causing the problem. Don't
yeah,
know who it is. We don't know what the problem is. We might not even have certain business processes mapped out to the level that we understand the
sure.
flow because it's some other API that's basically making all kinds of
Yeah,
decisions.
yeah,
Um, you're now working with the team,
yeah.
and there's the person who is basically responsible for the piece of code,
Mhm.
and you're basically saying, hey, let's bring on more people to help. What's the emotional state of that person potentially at that moment?
Depends. Uh, where are they at with things? Usually it is. So as a team lead, we do have to be careful about kind of understanding we are moving fast. We are potentially breaking things, but are we stepping back for a moment to have some those critical conversations to understand where is your head at, um, and to relay intention. Hey, we're bringing this person to help us out as a team, not because I don't trust you or that I don't feel like you can get this over the finish line, but I know they have some expertise that we need here. We need to make this happen for our client, for whomever. So it is being very delicate about those situations and recognizing them as they're happening. A lot of that is that communication. It is that body language of you can tell when people just gotta start shying away or they start feeling a little bit threatened. Kind of pick that up in the language as well. Of you start to sense that, and you're just like, hold on, let's take a time out here, and let's you and I let's break off from the group here, and let's go have a quick discussion around this. So it is how do we again drive back to team? How do we as a team find success? It goes as you just kind of mentioned. This is their code, this might be their problem. They might have it might have originated with them, but it's not. As a team, we're not pointing fingers at them saying, "Hey, you screwed up. You put us in this situation. We're working long hours because of you." It is no. We know that tomorrow it could be me that has this problem, and my team is going to back me up. So how can we jump in together and help that person out, knowing that at some point that same thing's going to happen to you? So I feel like if we can come at it the right way, then it doesn't feel as threatening. It does feel like we're all in this together. It's a collective success, and it's not necessarily, oh, you're fixing my screw up. And I have been in those type situations before as well, being a team member, and lots of finger pointing, lots of, we're going through this because of you. And it, people left the company. They've kind of, we weren't pulling, they weren't pulling back and having those conversations. They weren't understanding what exact emotions, feelings. These are high pressure, high stress situations. And it's very easy to kind of tip people in the wrong direction if we're not really being careful about how we handle some of these very delicate situations. And it is difficult. I mean, some of the most challenging ones that I've dealt with in the past are those high stress situations, because everybody's keyed up, everybody's on edge. And there are times we just take a breath, take a step back. Let's go walk around the building for a second. Just get away from the situation, clear our head so we can come back and come at this from a different angle. It's really imperative to take those moments to make sure we don't just end up just spinning our wheels and not really accomplishing anything.
Yeah. This is, I mean, you're giving these tips as if it's nothing, but this is incredibly, incredibly important. The dark side of not doing this is that, engineers panic. They go into this mindset of, I'm going to be fired. Then their ability to perform under stress is completely out the window. It becomes emotional. It feels like this other person, if they're forced onto you, then they're basically there to find how you screwed up, and you're going to be fired after this. And then the other aspect of it is a thing that I think, PhDs and software engineers appreciate, is that sometimes to solve a really tough problem, because some of the times these problems are incredibly difficult, and you wouldn't have had the problem if it was easy. You might have spotted it way ahead. So this could be like, mutex issues and parallel issues and all kinds of weird bugs that happen, once in a million, but in production somehow it's happening every single time. You need to take that step back to be able to let your back-end processing work. So there's a lot of really important techniques here that come to play all at once, and it's really easy to mess it up. What about the team? When you are in the hiring mode, when you're building out a team, how do you balance this idea of, and I'm going to make a few assumptions, keep me honest here if you disagree. There is a huge difference between an A player and a B player in software. It's not 5 to 10% better. It can be 5x better.
Yes.
And a C player will completely destroy your code base, like they will destroy your business. So the differences between the good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak, in engineering are massive. It's not marginal.
Sure.
And then on the other hand, what I've observed is that sometimes these A players come with a bag of issues where they might not be, and I'm being very mild here, they might not be the best team players, and that's okay because they can do the job of 3 developers. How do you balance that?
Very carefully. You're right. A lot of them do come with baggage. And sometimes you have to actually ask yourself, is that baggage worth it?
Yes.
Can I go get a better A player that's not going to be toxic to the team? And I think that's where I drive in at. It's like, if that A player is bringing down the rest of the team, then they're probably not worth what they're bringing to the table, even if they are 10x. It is a really careful balancing act of, having those right B players. And the C players, I mean, sometimes it's like, I got stuck with the C player. I kind of come from a consulting background, and I don't necessarily always get to choose who lands on my team. So it's like, how are we going to build support around that person that might not be great at that thing to make sure they don't kind of bring down the team themselves? So it is that whole like team construction of like, this person's really good at this thing, so let's find somebody that's good over here so we can help kind of balance things out. I mean, like I say, sometimes we don't have that luxury between, it's like, this person's available, they're coming in. It's like, okay, well, we're going to have to kind of figure out how that mix works, and to make sure that this dynamic, that we built is still going to be healthy and still going to be productive. But whenever we can, it is nice to be like, oh man, I'd love to have this type person on my team? Can we go find it
Yeah.
either as a hire or somebody that's rolling off a different team? Or, how can we construct that kind of, I mean, I've been in those teams that are just like unbelievable.
Magic.
Like, I'm not
Yeah.
sure how I got so lucky to construct
Yeah.
this group because they are awesome. And, it's like, how can I shower them with praise? How can I encourage them? How can I build them up? How can I push them out of their comfort zone a little bit to make this like very high functioning team, just a little bit stronger, a little bit better. Those are
So
great
so
teams.
let's take some assumptions. Let's say
Yeah,
that we do
yeah.
have a tabula rasa. We have a clean slate to build the team. What is the thinking process in order to build that team? Is it just well, we have to hire A players and everything will be fine? Or
Hmm.
is there a more complicated look to it? And I'm going to throw you a curveball here. Does the architecture even matter? Because I make the argument that the architecture and what you're building actually matters deeply to who you want to hire.
I think that's fair. I think I don't know that I'd go quite that far, but it is very important in the overall mix of things. To me, so I so I have served as like the employee growth role and some of those things in the past. So for me, it's very important to understand where are people at, where they want to grow, what's the next step for them. So I really love to find, I don't want necessarily all the A players because
Mm.
that brings its own kind of headaches and challenges of, the alpha dog in the room kind of thing. And why did you do this, this code pattern or anything else? Why didn't you do it the way that I want to do it? It's like, I need a little less emotionality at times. And through that, how can we bring on some of those B players that we think could be our next A players? And how do we help build
Mm.
them up? How do we put them in a position to succeed, to mentor underneath a really strong A developer or architect, and help bring them up? Because if I'm just pairing A players together over and over and over again, what's going on in my pipeline? My pipeline's probably pretty sad. How am I continually building this organization, this team to excel and to be, the next great thing? At the end of the day, those A players, they cost money. They're not cheap. So if I can
So
bring in a B player and I can build them up, yeah, I might lose them
you're
at some
calling them a
point
B
because
player, but would you agree that they are an A player that just hasn't come into their A player game yet? Um,
usually,
because as opposed to a B player that just is average in their capabilities, they have huge potential. You just need to guide them into manifesting that potential. So I would almost
yeah,
push back on you calling these kind of younger developers who, haven't yet reached that A status. They're not B players. They're just not there yet.
right, right. So yeah, and then that's an important distinction between how we're seeing
Yeah.
those B players. You're right. There are B players that will never be A players. They're just perfectly content to be B players. Growth has kind of stopped. That's concerning to me.
Yeah.
And I'm usually having conversations with them about that, about you're here, I need you here. What does that look like? Is there something I can do to help motivate, to help drive it? But you're right. There are places that it's like, this is a team contributor. They're good at what they do. They have a ceiling, and I have to accept that.
So tell us about that structure, right? You've got
Yeah,
the high power, you know, got the accolades, expensive. Then you've got a set of kind of more junior, but you can see the raw potential there,
sure.
right? That mix. How do you set it up to make sure that that relationship is incredibly successful and these kind of younger developers turn into everything that they can be?
Yeah, I think it's just being very deliberate about how we construct that. How do we do that pairing? Like I say, from a kind of a mentorship type aspect of finding that groove of one. It's having the one-on-ones with kind of team members and understanding, especially with the younger ones, where do you see your career going? And with the caveat of like, I know you're young, and part of that is just kind of exploring things, trying to figure out what speaks to you and what it is going to kind of click with you for the long term. So there's a little bit of it that's just like, I want to throw some of these very promising younger developers on different types of projects to see what
Mm,
they do and see how they handle certain situations, how they grow under certain people, and who they click with as well.
mm,
There are certain, I mean, try as I might, there are certain people I would pair together, and I'm like, this is going to be awesome. This person's going to learn so much from the senior developer, and it just doesn't work. For whatever reason, personalities or just approach, it's hard to kind of put into words what that is. But it's not like, okay, we failed that time. It's just
mm.
like, okay, well, that didn't work, so let's try it differently. Let's learn from that, and let's kind of come at it fresh, and figure out who is the person that this person's really going to jive with, and that's really going to help them kind of exponentially make those gains to make them quickly kind of close that gap. Because as you were saying before, that those B developers that we're kind of thinking of, I'd almost always rather have that junior that's hungry, that is
Mm.
learning, that is doing the new things, rather than even the senior developer who's been there for 10, 15 years. That's kind of, they're comfortable. They
Tapped
don't
out. Yeah.
necessarily want to push the bounds with their skills. It is what it is. So
Right.
I'm usually getting more out of that junior developer than I am even more seasoned senior developer, that's kind of done the things and been through a lot, but that growth potential isn't there.
Yeah, you're touching on two incredibly important points, I think, and it's this hunger that engineers may have or not have.
Yeah,
So it's you could have the raw potential to right that raw intellect, and that's what I call speed of thought. Right, you can think really fast and put these puzzles in your head together really quickly and kind of see the right picture as opposed to the wrong picture, and that's a whole different discussion.
yeah,
But then you can also be a senior developer and you have all the experience, but you just don't have that passion anymore to
yeah,
showcase that you can do the impossible and you can do the amazing things.
yeah.
Is this just like you're tired and old, or is this a cultural problem with how the organization is communicating, running, incentivizing? What have you seen happen in reality?
That's a great question, truthfully, and one I've probably struggled with over the years. Like, what makes this person kind of push the boundaries versus, and it can change over time as well. There are certain
Yes.
developers I've met during my career, and I'm like, this is going to be my next star. And then for whatever reason, something changes, something falls off, and that never happens. They just kind of settle in. Um, Kind of the biggest thing from my side, kind of watching developers, is if we're not challenging, if we're not having conversations, trying to figure out where they want to be, where they want to go, um, that you just kind of fall into that groove. And it
Yeah.
is, nobody's checking up on me, nobody cares about me, nobody's giving me a more challenging task. It just kind of is what it is. So um, how can we get ahead of that? How can we be proactive? How can we have those conversations? And even when we do, like I say before, it isn't necessarily just the lightning bolt that changes everything. At
Right.
the end of the day, uh, there are certain people that just aren't going to be able to make that jump.
Yeah. So I'm for the purpose of this conversation, I'm assuming that they can make the jump because otherwise it's to quote Joey from Friends, a moot point. Um,
Yeah.
let's assume they have the ability. What you're pointing to, and I 100% agree with you, that this is a management problem.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this paradigm, right? You have these great engineers that get promoted to managers. They might suck as managers, but then you have managers that are great human skills, but they don't know shit about code or as good as they should
Yeah.
from an architectural standpoint to guide the team on important decisions. And this is
Right.
an impossible situation. Do you have to find the person who's an amazing manager and also is great at code, or can you compromise on this?
I think it has gone from. I think it does find that balancing act of, is there, back to the team construction, is there that person that is strong team lead, can kind of foster team, has enough technical chops where they can support, but they may not be your strongest technical person on the team. Maybe you have that super senior developer that they're not management, but they can architect, they can code better than anyone else on the team. So how are, again, balancing act, how are we forming that team that has all of the different pieces that it needs so that we can kind of come together and be successful? It doesn't always happen. We try as we might, we don't always get to choose kind of what that composition looks like. But I think it is. I would rather have that balancing act of, you have these strengths, and I understand you do not have any of these strengths at all, but you compensate for me in these ways over here. And to your point of managers or people that get promoted up to management that shouldn't have or don't want to be, again, I think we need to be having those conversations very early with them. Like, I see management potential in you. Is this something that speaks to you? I have been with so many developers who are just so good, and they just got just promoted up into management. They had no desire to be in management.
Yeah.
And then people like looked at them like, well, why aren't you good at this? That was your next step in your career. Well, that's not what they wanted. This was never in their kind of life plan. They just want to be the great knockout programmer, knockout architect. Management was not for them. But if we don't have those conversations and we're just promoting them up because, hey, this is your next step, we're only hurting ourselves through that. So it is part of that conversation.
Peter's principle.
How do we see people, and how are we listening to them? Again, having the conversations about, what do you want? What's going to make you happy? What's going to make you a productive member of this team?
This is such an important point. I think it's hugely overlooked. Like, do you want to do this? I will throw a wrench in this. I have found that in certain cases, the people who don't want to be managers have the potential to be the best managers, and the people who want to be managers might possibly be the worst ones ever. And the reason why this happens is because of ego and this need to manage, to tell people what to do.
Sure.
That doesn't end well. And then the people who are like these great team players, and they kind of see the management role as me telling people what to do, that is not attractive to them. But actually they have the chops to create this team dynamic that is incredibly successful. But then I'm playing the devil's advocate here, but I also totally agree with your previous comments. That absolutely, it's not a contradiction, I think, in this case.
No, I agree with you. And in those type situations, I'm usually giving that person that's like, no, I don't want to be in management. But it's like, you're right. They're like, it just makes too much sense. You're perfect at this. I'm not necessarily contradicting them. I'm not telling them, no, I need you to be at management. I'm usually just kind of feeding them like management type responsibilities and just seeing what they do, see if they start taking to them. And then, having the conversation, I'm like, what do you think a manager is? Because basically you're already performing as a manager, and you're knocking the ball out of the park. You're unreal at this. And sometimes it's just a mindset. They have this vision of what a manager is, and it's just the blinders are on. It's like, I can't see anything other than what I've perceived a manager to be. And at the end of the day, it's like take the blinders off, because there's so much more to this space than what you ever thought about. And I need to help get them to see that. If I can, then I've succeeded and helped kind of carry them to a place that they never thought they could be. So
I that is gold. I couldn't agree more. I almost like, I'm not a big believer in like, we need to change language and words matter that much. I think actions matter, but I find myself disagreeing with that many times. And I'm going to make a comment to do exactly on that vein. I feel like we shouldn't call them managers or bosses. Really what they are, they're mentors, they're guides, they're Sherpas. And I think that I couldn't agree more, that misperception, both for the bad managers that are a bomb waiting to happen, and for the amazing ones that just don't want to be that it's just a misperception. I think that's incredibly insightful. I appreciate that, Mark.
I completely agree. And two, that the point of the mentor, I couldn't agree more. That's almost the most important piece of being a quote unquote manager. How are you building up your team? How are you building up that next generation that's coming up? But there are people that I've run into that kind of push back on that. It's like, I don't want to be the mentor. I don't want that responsibility. And again, it's just like, you have so much knowledge to give and to impart to other people. you really work well with this person over here, and you've been kind of doing some of that with them. So why don't you just play around with that space a little bit more? There's no obligation. There's no anything. If you come back to me
Yeah.
and be like, I don't like this, stop doing this. Fine, we're good. But
This is really important. So this idea of like an experiment, right? There's no obligation. Let's just
exactly.
do an experiment and see how it goes. And if you don't like it, you backtrack, no problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think the finality of like, oh, you're a manager now and I might fuck it up, like I think that's incredibly scary.
Oh yeah, yeah, I agree. But it is again helping people see the value that they bring to the table every day.
Yeah.
It's like you are my strongest DevOps engineer. All of this kind of resides within your head.
Right.
Help out that next generation. Help out that next person, because it makes your job easier. If
Right.
you can build up these other people, then you can kind of focus on some of the higher level stuff that you want to do, and you're not doing all the admin type stuff. But it's getting that across, because there are some people are just like, oh, that's management. I don't want to do that. It's like, yeah, I get it. And maybe there's a piece of that, if I step back, is like, as managers, are we putting something off? Or maybe it's not me, but maybe it's a manager they've had in the past that's kind of given them a shade of, I don't want to ever be that.
Yeah.
And so maybe it is just redefining what a manager is, and helping them see it is just giving back. It's helping someone else.
Right.
It is spreading that knowledge you gain throughout your career, because I know somebody's done that for you. I know a mentor has been in your corner, because there's almost no way you could have gotten to this place right now without somebody kind of looking after you and helping you out along the way. So
there's a few problems. One is the fact that negativity is more salient. So if we kind of go over to social psychology, then negative experiences are etched in our brains, while the positive ones kind of slide. So absolutely, we are constantly thinking about that worst manager, that horror story that we heard from the friend. Like, those are the things that are etched in our memory. The other aspect of it is that, the good things happen small and slow. The bad things are all at once, and they're awful. So I think that's a big part of it. Let me ask you this. We started with the horror stories. After the horror story, sometimes these horror stories repeat themselves 2, 3, 4 times.
They do.
And sometimes it's with the same person. And the rest of the team is now, look, this isn't about helping each other. This is one person, and there's a pattern. There is a decision to be made, quite a dramatic one at that point. Is this the end, or is there a plan to put together here? My first question is, how do you make that decision? Is there a plan to be put together, or is this the end?
So my hope is, if we're doing it right, we're seeing kind of after that first event of like, let's do a postmortem. Let's kind of understand what happened here. What would we have done better? What can we learn from this event right here? And part of that is me understanding, again, as part of the team, I'm not pointing any fingers, but I am understanding, where are my weaknesses? Where did we drop the ball? What were the kind of those foundational pain points and elements? So, and from that, how do I need to help support going forward? Maybe I had somebody in charge of something that they really weren't, an expert at, or even very good at. How can I shift things around, or how can I, add that layer of support to them, so the next time there's somebody kind of giving those checks and balances, and that accountability, so that hopefully we don't hit that the second time. But I do understand what you're saying, that there are times when it is just almost unavoidable. So it is that second time we see kind of the same pattern from before, and then it is kind of pulling them aside and just saying, hey, I noticed that kind of we fell in the same trap we did last time. Talk me through this. Where was your head at? What was going on? And then again, if it's the third time, that it is like, okay, we have a problem here. We keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. We're not learning from it. We're not getting better. So, in those times, it becomes a tough decision. Is are we taking this person off the team? Are we letting this person go? Usually it is, again, we're having those conversations along the way. We're setting that expectation of, hey, I need you to step up and do this better next time. Again, it's a one-on-one conversation. I'm not having this, as part of the team.
Of
But
course.
if we do see that pattern that's forming, so that you know, there shouldn't be much surprise to it's if we keep stepping on these
Yeah.
landmines, something's got to change.
So Mark, I love how you glance over these incredibly insightful and important comments, and you just glance over them as if everybody understands and knows this. So I'm going to pull you and our audience back to something you said.
Sure.
You talked about checks and balances.
Mhm.
What are those checks and balances? What do they look like? What are the engineering? And we'll keep this a little high level, not to go too much into, tech jargon. What do those checks and balances look like? And how do you do them right as opposed to wrong? And what value do they drive?
Yes, usually when we're in a project, we're looking at, maybe we're looking at the next week's sprint, and we're looking at the stories, and we're saying, this one has some risk. I'm going to give it to my top developer. This one's interesting. I think this could be a growth area for kind of one of my junior developers, or whomever on the team. I'm going to assign them this, but I know that one has a little bit of risk to it as well. So how am I going to pair? Hey, senior developer, or super smart developer over here. I'm going to pair them with you. You're not working on this thing, but I want you to check in, every couple of days. How are things going? What challenges are you having? Why did you approach things like this? Why didn't you do it like this instead? So it is kind of having that kind of mentor within the project, and it doesn't always have to be kind of the same person working kind of within each kind of set of work, but it is somebody providing that accountability, providing those checks and balances, so we don't get to the end of the sprint and it's like, oh, you didn't finish that. What happened here? It's not the reactive. We can be as proactive as we can along the way to make sure we land in a good spot. And two, that senior developer can raise this red flag and say, hey, we got a problem here. This is not going well. We're 3 to 4 days into it. We're at risk of not delivering this thing. And okay, let's recalibrate. Let's reset. Maybe I need to reassign that to somebody else. Again, this is not a reflection on you that we're taking this work away from you, but we need to get this across the finish line. This is probably a little bit greater challenge that maybe I shouldn't have given to you at this point. But again, we're going to learn from it. We're going to get better. And don't take this personally. This is a learning experience. We're gonna hit this hard next time. We're going to come fresh, and we're going to have a successful kind of next adventure.
Yeah.
So
there's
so it is just making sure we are coming at things correctly, and we're making sure we're setting ourselves up well. Because again, if that one critical piece doesn't get delivered, it almost doesn't matter what else the rest of the team did.
Right.
That's
what everybody's
going to be looking at. And so, well, why didn't you deliver that? That was the thing that was really important to us.
Yeah. To our managers in the audience, sometimes software is a pipeline, and if there's a leak in the pipe, nothing will work. So, these things can be critical. We're dependent on each other. But what you're describing at high level is extreme programming, peer programming, and then mentorship, which really is using an element of design review and code reviews.
Yes.
I was horrified to get this feedback that code reviews don't work. My pushback I didn't push back, but my thing that was going through my head is like, you're not doing your code reviews right. So let me ask you this, since I know you agree with me that code reviews are incredibly important, design reviews. How do you do them well? And what have you seen where they're just awful, not working, not delivering the value? Because there's definitely a way to do them very well. And there's a way where it just doesn't drive value. And that's why I'm assuming that executive is like, oh, code reviews are a waste of time.
Yeah, I think it is a cultural component. How much importance are we putting behind those code reviews? At the end of the day, if you're checking a box, a code review comes in and you're like, I am super busy. I've got 10 more important things to do today. Sure, looks fine. Check, it's through. That is where we get into the code reviews don't matter, because we as an organization, as a team, haven't put value behind it. It's just another thing I've got to get done today. It's in my way towards me being productive in the thing that I'm going to be judged on. So again, how do we reset that? How do we say, well, this is important to the team. This is important to our code base that we are releasing, and we are standing behind, that we are
Right.
proud of what we are releasing. And the standards that we set from a coding perspective, we are all in charge of that. And that falls on all of us. So if we come at it from that perspective, then it has more value. We are kind of standing up to our own, the standard that we've
Yeah.
set. So part of that sounds a little trite because, like, yeah, that's nice, but we're all kind of up against a gun, and we're driving towards this release that we have to get done. So I don't have the extra time in my day. I get it. I
Look,
get it.
that is a very dark path
Yeah.
because if
Yeah.
you are taking that stance and you're doing offline code reviews as a check mark, and it's not just some small thing that you can review offline, but you actually do have to have the proper code review process, which is Socratic.
Mhm.
Um, what's going to happen is 5 years later you have a whole bunch of spaghetti code, or
Yes.
what the youngsters are calling it nowadays, anti-patterns.
Yes.
This is a really bad outcome. And what happens is that at some stage, let's say you get lucky from a business perspective,
Right.
your code's not going to scale, and then it's going to start breaking. You're going to have more quality issues. You're not going to be able to handle load and scale. And you've never done like a multi-agent, hit the API test to see what is your leadway,
Right.
runway on scale and load. So you have
Yeah.
no idea when it's going to blow up in your face.
Okay.
So you're just sliding through these topics which are so insightful and so important. You said standards of coding. You said proud. I want to lean into that for a second because I think those are such important comments that you made. What is the sense of pride in your work, and how does that link up, which I think incredibly links up to this idea of having pride in your work? Why are those two things inexplicably connected?
Yeah, I mean, when I think back through, I've been in technology for 20, 25 years now. And there are places where the first job I got out of grad school, I pointed back, I'm like, they're still using that system. It pains me to know that they're still using that system 20 years later. I'm like, why haven't you rewritten that? But it worked so well that it just fit the need. And they didn't feel the need to upgrade it and kind of move it on. I think as creators, we take very much pride in what we put out in the world.
Yeah.
And knowing that it makes a real difference. I mean, it shattered my thinking when the first system I ever built was like this affiliate management system. And the person who was in charge of the affiliate department said, "You just saved us from having to hire 2 workers." And I'm like, never occurred to me that, I could have this much impact with that one little thing that I developed. So I want all of us to have that much pride in what we
Right.
do. And part of that is having those standards that say, what we're putting out is quality. We're not cutting corners. We're not, just socking away tech debt that, well, that's going to be somebody else's problem. I'm going to be long gone by the time somebody has to deal with that. If I'm ever hearing any of that from team, I'm just like, no, let's
Yeah.
step back. Let's reset, because something went horribly awry in communications. And we have gotten to akin by that toxic state of,
Yeah.
this is going to bite us. We are going to get into those scaling problems. We are going to get into those situations where we are not building software for the business. We're building software for today. What's gonna get this check-in done?
Yeah. Oh, we're
God,
going to rebuild that anyway later. Yeah, don't worry
yeah,
about it, kind of thing.
yeah.
Okay, so you're in this incredibly difficult situation. How do you get out of it?
Well, first things first. Usually, when I've been in this situation, it is business kind of pressing the technology team. Hey, I need more features out the door. These bugs need to be fixed. It is that pressure cooker type situation where people kind of get into these bad habits. And it does just become this, I don't have time to do all these things that we should be doing. So it's up to us as technology leaders, managers, to go to the business and have those conversations of like, here's what's happening. Here's what I see happening on the ground, and here's the impact to our business. I understand all of these things that you have put on our plate are super important. They are all number one priorities, but we have to back off, because here's what's going to happen if we don't. And if we aren't having those conversations with the C-level executives, the kind of upper level managers, they just assume everything's fine. Nobody's
Yeah.
telling me otherwise. So yeah, I'm going to keep pushing partner requests down on you guys, and get that software out the door as quickly as possible. And they again, this is not their world. So to them, it's just I'm just doing what I need to do my job. But if I'm not having that conversation, if I'm not going to them and saying, hey, this is detrimental to our business, then what how are they to know otherwise?
That's incredibly important and insightful because, great engineers can put out shit code
Oh
in
yeah.
the wrong culture and wrong environment.
Yes.
And yes, there's a business executive applying pressure, and I am that business executive in my day job,
Mhm.
and striking that balance of like, come on, is this really a month, or can this be done in a week?
Right.
Um, Sometimes that's the right thing to do, but in other times, and I think this is the one that is sometimes underused, is hold on. Do we need to clean up some technical debt now? Do you need an extra week, an extra 2 weeks to do this right? Now that we've tested it, now that we've
Yeah.
MVP'd it, now that we know that the requirements and the customers are solid with what we've done, do we need to do some cleanup? And that is something that very often we don't get to that stage, and that is incredibly
You're right.
risky.
You're right. And I wish there was a magic wand where I could say that we everything kind of comes together, and we can have those conversations and those things crop up. But you're right. It more often than not, those things do fall through the cracks. We can bring that again, shine a big spotlight on those things, saying, "Hey, for the quality of what we're putting out for our customers
Mhm.
and how they're going to kind of interact with our product and our brand, this is really important." So, some of those battles I win, some of those battles I don't. But we keep showing up, we keep shining that awareness on it, and hopefully we do break through, and we make some key wins along the way. And other times we're just like, well, our yeah, I think of that tech debt catalog that we kind of have, kind of ever
Yeah.
growing, or it's ever expanding, or kind of falling. How are we bringing that to kind of those key stakeholders and saying
Yeah.
tech debt is getting to a worrisome state of
Yeah.
here's what I'm seeing of could potentially bite us in the next 6 to 12 months because of this.
Yeah.
How are we as a team come together, an executive or leadership team could come together to address this? So it's
Yeah.
not we're sitting here 12 months from now having the exact same conversation, and now it's starting to impact our business.
Yeah. That's really important. I mean, from my perspective, it's about, I think it's an English to English translation problem, right? The engineers are talking about the .NET version and on
Yes.
database processes happening in memory versus SQL.
Mhm.
To the executive team, that's garbage. Like, that's
Oh
Chinese,
yeah.
even though it's
Oh,
English. I
mhm.
think the challenge there is to translate that into English and to say, look, and this is a little bit difficult to do, it requires some work, but to translate it into, oh, we won't be able to go above 1,000 customers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So translating that to, let's call it requirements, like this
Mhm.
is our scale, stress load capability right now. And if
Yeah.
we want to exceed that, then we have to do some work, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely. Or it could come down to our cloud costs are going to balloon, and your expenses are
yes,
going to
that's a
be
good one.
X when they were Y.
Yeah. And
How
it's not always about getting some reserved servers. Sometimes you have to change
no,
architecture.
no. I mean, it is a sales job at the end of the day. It's like,
Yeah.
how can I sell you on the importance of the things, speaking your language, as you just
Yeah.
said, the things that are going to matter, and impact our
Yeah.
bottom line. So,
Yeah.
so it is that kind of, can I speak both of these languages, and can I do it well to make sure that we can get what we need?
Yeah.
Um, and again, back to having pride in our work. We have the time to do this correctly,
Yeah.
and release the software that all of us are going to be proud of.
I would argue, we talked about kind of managers and engineers being promoted into managers. I would argue that skill that nobody has initially, of
Mhm.
learning to speak the managerial language, even though
Yes.
you're directly interfacing with the engineers. So being able to have those two different versions of English, that's a
Yeah.
skill that,
So much.
maybe as a team lead, you can struggle with it, but when you become a director, you have to nail that. You have to know how to do it. Otherwise, you're just not going to make that role.
Yeah, the
Incredibly
executive
important.
communication is so important. I had some great mentors of my own. Of like, you just sent me a novel. I
Mm.
needed the 4 bullet
A
points that were
wall of
important to me.
text. Oh my
The wall
lord.
of text is so fun, but it's like I
Uh,
need you to know all the details. Like, no, I don't need to know all the details. Tell
I've
me
done a lot
how
of
this impacts me. Tell me how I
yeah.
can help you. That's what I need to know. So,
I had a
um,
mentorship process with one of my engineers, and I was like, rewrite that to 3 sentences and explain it to me in my language. And he
uh,
tried. Oh Lord, did he try and fail? But ultimately, after trying enough times, he got it. And it's a shift of a
good.
mindset, and it's
It
incredibly
is.
important.
It is.
Mark, this has been so much fun. We're so over time. My wife is this is supposed to be 30 minutes, not 45. So okay, we're gonna wrap up.
All right.
There's one question that is scripted. It's the only question on the show that's scripted. It's an incredibly difficult question because it's personal.
All right.
If you had to go back to 20-something-year-old Mark, what would you advise him?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. So I have to say it's been an interesting journey and career. I started out as a .NET developer, did that for kind of 15 or so years, ran my own business for a while, was consulting for 10 years, and through the consulting journey, kind of went into the management ranks of director and vice president, and now kind of on the CTO side. So it has been very rewarding for me. Technology
Mm,
has always been about how do we help the business.
right.
In my early days, I probably geeked out on all the kind of the new and the greatest and everything else.
I'm
But
sure you still do.
not as much these days. But yes, there are
A little
times when
bit,
I'm just
yeah.
like, oh man, that is awesome. Just kind of diving into it, just being hands on. But yeah, it is that transformation of things, and like how I see business, how I see technology helping the business. That's been really kind of key for me. And
Mm,
I was a psychology major, in undergrad and college, so this I had almost never even used a computer, back in those days. So this has allowed me to kind of come full circle, the management side of things, the people leadership, to really be able to invest in people and help them out. Kind of tapped into that other side of who I was, and kind of brought that back into focus. So I don't know that I would necessarily say do anything differently. It's been a great road, and I think I've landed exactly where I should be. It's had my fair share of missteps, and I wish I hadn't have done that along the way. But we grow through those things, and they make us
that's right.
stronger. And truthfully, I wouldn't have gotten here without some of those missteps. So no, I would tell them to have fun and to explore the opportunities that come to you, and to embrace them.
Mark, thank you so much for joining the show today. I deeply appreciate you.
Thank you, Art. It's been great.